After an official reveal in March 2017, the Range Rover Velar began deliveries that summer. The model has continued until early 2023, when the vehicle was officially facelifted and updated by Land Rover. Both the pre- and post-facelift vehicles are coded L560 and built on the D7A platform. Note that this video is for pre-facelift used models, as the latest facelift is just arriving to dealers at the time of this video's release. In short, the facelift will bring an updated infotainment system, mild exterior updates and lower emissions. But as with all our videos, we're going to concentrate on used examples that you can buy today without waiting for a new car delivery slot from Land Rover. Starting back in 2017, the Velar is noted for having an aluminium platform to increase agility and offer lower curb weight. It was and continues to be built in Solihull, England, sharing components with several Jaguar models, with the F-Pace being the most similar. However, the Velar is nearly 3 inches, or 72mm to be exact, longer, but does have a matching wheelbase to the F-Pace at 2.874 metres or 113.15 inches. It should also be noted that a single trim model, the R-Dynamic S, was also built in India for the Indian domestic market and sold at up to 20% less than purchasing a UK built unit. These are only available to the Indian market, and the rest of the world receives a UK built model. The name Velar isn't new to Land Rover, having initially been used to describe the pre-production Range Rovers back in 1969. However, today the Velar stands to the side of the fully fledged Range Rover brand, along with the Evoque. This is to take nothing away from its styling, comfort or premium feel, but to designate it as an on-road design with off-road capability, which is different to the Range Rover and Range Rover Sport that still retains a strong off-road capability, performing top of class in a variety of independent testing, whilst offering a luxury cabin and strong on-road performance. The difference may be subtle to some and striking to others, but before choosing to buy a Velar, it is worth considering whether you want a Range Rover for the road with the occasional trip off into the mildly challenging scenery beside it, or you want a luxury car that will shrug off even some of the most testing off-road conditions. It is worth mentioning that unlike the larger Range Rovers, and both the Land Rover Defender and Discovery, the Velar has a lower maximum towing capacity of 2,500 kilograms or 5,500 pounds. It is also worth mentioning that Land Rover didn't just make a light version of a full Range Rover, and that the Velar stands on its own merit, taking on competition from road-focused SUVs like the Porsche Cayenne, BMW X5 and Mercedes GLE. The Velar has both sharper turning and quicker reactions on the road than the larger Range Rover models due to its much lower weight, which in base trim is officially recorded at just over 1,800 kilograms and rises to just shy of 2,000 kilograms or 4,319 pounds, although additional optional extras can increase these figures. Across the years, the Velar has been on sale. 2018 and 2019 production, which may be classed as 2019 and 2020 model years, had the highest sales figures, and so on the used market these are likely to offer the greatest choice. This is partially due to the global pandemic pausing some months of production in 2020 and 2021 and reducing new car supply. Before we move on to the common faults to look out for, we have a list of recalls on the Velar model. We will note that not all of these recalls may affect your home market, and future recalls may still be announced. In 2017, a recall was announced for a batch of chassis produced before September of that year, equipped with a diesel engine. A faulty fuel return hose was detected on some models. A separate recall was made for models equipped with a 2-litre petrol engine and produced up to January 2018 for fuel rail end caps. Both of these recalls should have been undertaken during routine service or before. Again, in 2017, a recall was issued for models built until November of that year, after reports of a faulty HVAC system from a small number of customers. Vehicles produced between the months of October and December 2018 were found to be at risk of the crankshaft pulley retaining bolt fracturing. A recall was issued to avoid possible engine damage or engine failure. In 2018, a recall was announced for the 2-litre diesel models in the wake of the VW emissions scandal. Land Rover recalled the 2-litre models due to some reports of higher than certified levels of CO2 emissions. Owners of affected vehicles were called and booked in for a recall work, or had the recall work performed during scheduled maintenance. Recall code N590 was announced in 2021 for a number of 2020 and 2021 produced vehicles that suffered from failure of the wire grid used to support the fuel return line, leaving the possibility of a small fuel leak. Recall code N720 was announced in 2022 to check and replace the front seatbelt pre-tensioner on models produced between January to May of 2022. A total number of vehicles has not been announced, although this recall affected several Land Rover models. In February 2023, recall campaign N763 was announced for the camshaft carrier oil gallery, which can lead to an oil leak. Models affected were produced in 2022 and 2023, although at the time of this video, owners may yet to have been contacted if they own an affected vehicle. Finally, in April 2023, a recall campaign began, coded N785, for all production years, although the number of units affected was not available at the time of making this video. Owners will be contacted if they own a vehicle that Land Rover believe is at risk of overheating under specific operating conditions that could damage the elbow pipe of the coolant, leading it to rupture. Next up are the faults to look out for, and a reminder to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the video, as we find only 1% of our viewers subscribe, and liking a video really lets us know whether you've enjoyed it or not. We should note that several motoring outlets have reported that the Velar scores well in overall reliability testing, and it is one of the strongest in the Land Rover range. However, we have found a variety of faults that are worth looking at when shopping for a Velar. The first common fault is a simple one to check. Door handles sit flush with the bodywork when not in use and open out to access the vehicle. These can remain stuck in the outward position. The cause is a lack of lubrication, and most handles return back into place after a delay, but with some additional lubrication on the hinge, they should start to work as intended. We also found some reports of door handle mechanisms failing, with the one telltale sign being that the handle will sit out of place rather than flush against the bodywork. When viewing a vehicle, it is suggested to check all screens operate as expected. A good method is to unlock the car, drive it and then stop, making sure to press a few buttons along your journey. Then get out of the vehicle, lock and unlock the car and check the screens operate. Do this again and then play around with both the top and bottom screens. Any long delay in the screens restarting, or if an infotainment screen goes blank and will not show any information, are signs of faulty units. Owners reported 2 additional issues with in-car technology centred around the satellite navigation bugs or poor guidance, and the screen for the rear camera not returning to normal function afterwards and remaining stuck on the camera screen until the car is switched off and then back on again. If a Range Rover Velar feels rough and transmits every bump in the road, then it is likely suffering from worn shock absorbers or damaged bushings. There are several reports of premature wear to the shock absorbers, and so it is worth finding a few speed bumps or poor road surfaces to test out a used purchase. All Range Rover Velars have an 8-speed automatic transmission, although we will note that there are 2 different transmissions depending on the engine that you specify, with higher power models receiving a higher torque rated gearbox to handle the power. There have been some reports of problems with these, including fluid leaks and overheating. Ask a previous owner if the gearbox has ever needed maintenance work, and check it operates through all 8 forward gears and into reverse gear without any juddering or sudden hard shifts. Now onto the engines, and in the Velar there are 2 diesel options which expand to a total of 3 with the introduction of the inline 6 diesel replacing the V6 diesel in 2020. Then there is a single plug-in hybrid model and 3 petrol engines, with a 4th also added to replace the V6 model with an inline 6 similar to the diesel models. We'll start with the diesels. First up is the 2-litre 4-cylinder motor, either with a single or twin turbocharger. Power begins at 178 brake horsepower and then 201 brake horsepower in the single turbo D180 and D200 models, and is highest in the twin turbo D240 model with 237 brake horsepower. An average fuel economy of 43.5 miles per gallon or 6.49 litres per 100 kilometres. It should be noticed that both the D180 and D240 were dropped from the lineup towards the end of 2020, leaving just the D200 model for those wanting a 2021 or newer Velar with a 2-litre diesel engine. Although many owners opted for the 2-litre diesel, making it one of the most popular in the Velar, and the majority did not report problems, 4 common areas are beginning to stand out. These are boost pipes for the turbocharger splitting, which will lead to turbo failure if untreated, the timing chain which can stretch or fail due to faulty timing guides. A revised timing chain design was released by JLR in 2019, curing this issue, and specialists will repair a failed or stretched timing chain with the revised part if the rest of the motor is undamaged. DPF failures and problems with the AdBlue system are common in emissions related issues, and DPF unit replacement is performed when a unit can no longer be regenerated or is too damaged to work effectively at reducing particulate emissions. The 3-litre twin-turbo diesel V6 engine produces 271 or 298 brake horsepower, depending on if purchased as a D275 or D300. This engine was also discontinued in late 2020 to make way for a newer inline 6 Ingenium engine offered only as the D300 and producing 298 brake horsepower. The average fuel economy for the V6 diesel is 35.8 miles per gallon or 7.89 litres per 100 kilometres, and for the newer inline 6 diesel it is quoted at 36.2 miles per gallon or 7.8 litres per 100 kilometres. The V6 diesel engine has been with Land Rover for quite some time and evolved from the 2.7 TD V6 back in 2005 to a 3 litre TD V6 and then SD V6 in the earlier Range Rover Sport. An ongoing problem that appears rarer in occurrences in newer versions of this engine is crankshaft failure. Although it has become rarer, the problem never completely disappeared, and so shorter oil change intervals may help reduce the risk, but a warranty that covers engine failure due to crankshaft failure is the best for complete peace of mind. There have also been several reports of oil dilution reported by Jaguar owners of the same engine. The motors are not exactly the same and Land Rover buyers seem to suffer less, but shortened oil services is generally the best course of action to reduce the risk of oil dilution. If you view a vehicle with proof of shortened service intervals, take it as a positive buying sign. The inline 6 diesel that replaced the V6 is still covered under manufacturer warranty in the Velar, with the first ones to reach 3 years of age, doing so later this year. Because of this, we have little data on any known faults, but if you experienced any problems, please add them in the comments below. Next up we have the 4 petrol engines, and again we'll start with the smallest motor. The 2 litre inline 4-cylinder motor is sold as a P250 with single turbo or P300 with twin turbo and a plug-in hybrid form as P400e. Power starts at 247 brake horsepower and rises to 296 brake horsepower in the P250 and P300 models. The plug-in hybrid has a combined figure of 398 brake horsepower with a battery range of 31 miles to a full charge. Note that the P300 was dropped in late 2020. Official fuel economy figures is quoted at 30.5 mpg or 9.26 litres per 100 kilometres for the regular petrol models and 124 mpg or 2.28 litres per 100 kilometres on the hybrid, although this figure will vary widely depending on the frequency of charge and the type of mileage driven. We didn't find any faults reported on the hybrid system, although these vehicles are still covered under manufacturer warranty at the time of this video's release. The 2 litre engine is generally reliable, although timing chain failure has been reported. We also found oil pump failure reported, although there is a question as to whether these had been maintained to the correct schedule. Next up is the supercharged 3 litre V6 engine producing either 335 brake horsepower or 375 brake horsepower, depending on whether it is specified as a P340 or P380 model. Note that in some markets it is badged somewhat confusingly as an SI6 V6. The motor was dropped from the lineup in late 2020 in favour of the newer inline 6 3 litre turbocharged Ingenium motor badged P400 and producing 395 brake horsepower. The average fuel economy is 30.1 miles per gallon or 9.38 litres for 100 kilometres for the V6 and 27.3 mpg or 10.35 litres per 100 kilometres for the newer inline 6. Again, the newer inline 6 is still under manufacturer warranty at the time of this video, but if you're looking at the V6, it is critical to check around the coolant pipework of the engine to spot any leaks, particularly around the clamps that hold the pipework in place. Finally, there is the 5 litre Supercharged V8 that will be familiar to lovers of high-powered Land Rovers and Jaguars. It is quite rare to find on the Velar as it was only offered for a short time, ending its availability in late 2020, along with several other of the V-configured engines mentioned earlier. Power is rated at 542 brake horsepower, with an official 25 miles per gallon or 11.3 litres per 100 kilometres. Due to the rarity, few complaints have been noted by owners of the 5 litre Velar, but from our other Range Rover and Range Rover Sport buyers guides, we will say that any sign of poor running is likely caused by worn vacuum hoses, and replacing the water pump as preventative maintenance is considered prudent. If you've experienced any additional issues, please leave them in the comments below. For our picks, we would suggest either a well cared for 2 litre diesel in D200 trim on a lower budget, or on a higher budget either the hybrid P400e or newer 3 litre inline 6-cylinder petrol in the P400 specification. However, if you're not sure whether the Velar is for you, why not check out our guide to the L494 Range Rover Sport and L405 Range Rover Next. As ever, all the best with your car search.